today I'm going to make a MIDI keyboard for myself so I can play some synthesizers. The biggest problem that I have is the fact that all of the MIDI keyboards, well, they're not very accessible for Barbie dolls like myself, so I'm going to be making one that's a little bit more friendly for people my size. This story starts when Sam had a chat with Aiden way back in March 2022? 2022? Is it 2022? Yeah, 2022. When Aiden dropped off a few computers. Quite a few of those are now plugged in and working, including the IBM, the Xerox, the Tecton Einstein, and Apple II. There's a link to some of the videos on the repairs of these and more information below on the museum YouTube channel. Anyway, I digress. Aiden was chatting about the fact that the Barbie keyboard is apparently actually pretty damn good, and it might be perfect to do a little project on. So after a little bit of looking around, Sam found one. Woo! So let's have a look at what's inside of the box, shall we? There we go. So you'll notice that it's actually already in pieces. Well, that's because this was a non-functioning item. And yeah, Sam started this project last year, and yeah, I don't know why it stopped. It just got put in the shelf, and I had to wait for nearly a year till Sam made me a gosh darn MIDI keyboard out of this thing. But today is finally the day that we're going to be working on this together, because that's the only way it's going to get done, because if I don't keep on bugging Sam about finishing this thing, then I'm never going to be able to play on the synths or the organ, because the organ takes MIDI as well. We're going to make this a multi-usable keyboard so we can plug it into absolutely anything. The magic thing about the Barbie electronic piano, which makes this all worthwhile, is the fact that all of the keys, they're actually separate. Like, they're all separate buttons, so you actually can play every single one of the white notes. That's thanks to the circuit board right here. You'll see that there is a ribbon along it that connects a common wire to all of the wires that go off over here, which originally were wired into some resistors, which then goes into a circuit around the other side, and it's an oscillator that's based around a 4069 chip. It shares a lot in common with a stylophone. So if each of these buttons have a single wire that go up to a single connection, it can be plugged into separate inputs of a microcontroller like this teensy, which is in my hand right here. That is definitely not blue tack there. I'm definitely holding it. So in effect, we solder a microchip onto this circuit board, which means we can make the piano do whatever the heck we want. And I want to make it into a MIDI keyboard. The first thing I've got to do is solder a bunch of wires into each of these using a soldering iron. Actually, first let's clear the desk up so we can get on with it neatly. Get out of the way. Right, so we're going to wire these wires to these connectors right here. It used to have a resistor package like this thing right here, but that's not going to be useful for us when we're going to be plugging it up to, get out the way, get out the way, get out the way, to the teensy. So let's flip the board over. Oh, this is so hard. And put them in on this side, like so. Boop, 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 doo. There we go. Lovely jubbly. This tool is a bit too big. I need my assistant. Thank you very much. There we go. Done. Lovely jubbly. As you can see, there is one of the ribbon cables soldered on. We just need to solder another one to this bit right here, and then we have access to all of the keys on the keyboard. And then we can plug them into this. Yes! Now I need to solder the ribbon cables onto the teensy. It's a little bit fiddly, so I'm going to get my assistant to do it.
Thanks a lot. I can't keep that up forever because I want to show you like why this is such an interesting little keyboard. The keys are actually a pretty funky design that means that you have a very small keyboard that is actually playable all with separate functioning keys. It's actually from 1981 and yeah, it's quite an interesting one. So inside the case, the keys will be sitting here. They'll be sitting there soon. I've wired in the teensy, and that is wired in via the ribbon cables onto where the old resistors went onto the circuit board. So there's a conductive film that's on the top, and underneath that there's some separate pads in there that get selected and connects the common wire, which is connected to this conductive strip, which is now connected to ground on the teensy. And in the back of every single one of the keys is a tiny little punch, and that basically punches to the designated pads on the keyboard. It should just work like a literal normal keyboard. I just my hands are a bit big, so they're gonna smush a few of them together at the same time. The other crazy thing is the feel of the actual keys are not that bad at all, and if I had tiny, tiny little hands, I think this would pretty good. However, it's not completely to scale. It's more like Barbie jumbo keys if we look at it that way. But still, I think if it was actually any smaller, it would be completely impossible to play. All I've got to do now is wire in the power and a MIDI cable to these 3 wires right here, and we should be able to test it out.
We need to drill a couple of holes, one for the MIDI socket and the other for the power socket. Be careful and don't hurt your hands with the step drill bit. That's looking pretty good. I'm pleased with that. This is going to be awesome. Then we add a voltage regulator because the teensies need 3.3 volts. So this is a 7805 with a couple of capacitors just to make sure we don't blow up anything on the microchip. It's just being careful. You might be able to skip it. Then we add a couple of resistors to the MIDI cable. These are the 220 ohm. There's information with the video link in the description for this as well as the code. And then we glue it down and we get the USB, and I started coding it using that code that I told you about. I just adjusted it to fit the input pins on the teensies so we can play the right notes at the right time. Anyway, let's try and put this back together. It's a little bit hard when you've got hands as small as mine, but look at that, I managed it. With sheer determination, I was able to pick it up and put the legs on as well with nobody helping. It was really actually quite easy, but it just requires a lot of strength, a lot of wiggling. Oh, just give us a sec, I'll get this over. It's a little tough, come on. There we go. Oh. And there we go. Plug it in and give it a test. Oh, I can't wait. Ooh.
You know what, it actually works pretty well. Obviously my fingers are a bit too big to play it, but it's polyphonic, it's in tune, all of the buttons are really responsive. I think we should plug it into some stuff. Maybe we should start with plugging it into the organ. Right, let's give this a go. Don't tell Barbie, but I've borrowed her arms.
Why can't I feel my arms?
It works! Oh, I can actually play it with my hands. Let's try Barbie hands. It's like the theme tune to Barbie and Ken's marriage. Honestly, it's not actually that bad. The Sega made a 1/6 scale grand piano that has playable keys. It doesn't have MIDI out, so it would have needed to be modified to do the same thing. However, the keys are a lot smaller. These keys are actually quite playable. I mean, I say quite playable, they're still even for stumpy hands, but you can actually sort of play the notes. So it seems to be the smallest you can probably get and be usable without a toothpick. Right, let's try and plug it into a synth and see if it's at all usable. Oh, actually, it's pretty good in monophonic mode because I've got it plugged into a monophonic synth voice. It actually works! Oh, that smells good. It works! Okay, so as far as MIDI controllers, this is pretty rubbish, purely because, well, the keys are too small. They are probably the smallest they can be at a usable level. Like I mentioned, the Sega 1/6 grand piano, the keys are even smaller, but they'd be impossible to play. But I think this would be perfect for somebody who has a hamster that's a musical aficionado or something like that. Or maybe it's, yeah, I think it's a good hamster size. So if you know of any hamsters who have got a dab hand at playing the keyboard, well, this MIDI controller may be perfect for them. Of course, if you're playing with Barbie hands, you can only play 2 notes at once because you're kind of sticking them. Actually, just came up with an idea. What about 3D printed finger bits on the end of your fingers that have got sticks so you can try and play them? That might be a video. Let us know if you're interested in seeing that. Anyway, it's just a little bit of a fun idea. I've got to get ready for a Patreon live stream that's going on tonight. There's links below to the videos talking about the code and the Arduino project that this is based around. Surprisingly, I've used this same piece of code in about 5 or 6 videos in the last like 12 months. But anyway, I'm Look Mum No Computer. That's the Barbie grand piano. And yeah, don't be scared to try it. Maybe don't try this unless you have a musical hamster. I've modified this miniature Barbie grand piano. Stay up. As you can see, there's a few wires dangling out. And it's now playing this thing right here, the church organ. See how via this wire, it's going and plugging into the church organ. Let's see if I could get my little pinkies playing it. Come on. Why are my hands bigger than Barbie's? God damn it! Don't ask me how, but I've luckily found a Barbie hand. And oh, I've dropped it.